What if I told you that the most profound psychic injury you could ever sustain from another person won't come from a shout, but from a whisper? What if the most psychologically damaging phrase isn't the overt declaration, "I hate you," but the deceptively gentle, almost virtuous-sounding statement, "I'm just being honest"? This paradox holds a critical truth about the nature of our inner world and how fragile our sense of reality can truly be. Because some injuries aren't blows to the body or even the ego, they are a slow, quiet poison to the soul. Think about a time you walked away from a conversation with a low hum of dissonance in your chest. It wasn't the clean, hot sting of anger or the sharp pang of sadness. It was a murky, disorienting feeling of being fundamentally wrong. As if you had just been handed a script to a play where your character is described as irrational, and you found yourself, against your better judgment, starting to believe it. In that moment, a cascade of silent questions likely floods your mind. Did I imagine that undertone? Am I overreacting? Maybe who I am, my sensitivity, my perception, is the actual problem. This is the anatomy of soul-level confusion, a state where your own mind begins to feel like an unreliable narrator. This feeling, this profound psychological vertigo, is not a flaw in your design. It is not a sign of weakness. It is a distress signal from the deepest parts of your psyche. In Jungian terms, you might call it a disturbance in the connection to the self, that core of wisdom and authenticity within us. Trauma experts like Gabor Mate or Bessel van der Kolk would recognize it as the body's innate intelligence signaling a profound disconnect between an external reality being presented to you and the truth your nervous system holds. This feeling is an alarm, but it's been muffled under layers of logic and self-doubt. It's the feeling of your emotional compass spinning erratically, no longer able to find true north. Today, we journey into that shadowy terrain. We are moving past the obvious theatrics of overt conflict to explore something far more insidious, the quiet language that deconstructs your reality. This is an exploration of the words that don't just hurt your feelings, but are designed, consciously or not, to break your internal guidance system. We're going to illuminate these subtle weapons of the psyche, not to foster paranoia, but to reclaim the most important thing you own, your clarity and the unwavering truth of your own inner world. In the landscape of the human psyche, not all wounds are created equal. Our psychological grammar is fluent in the language of overt conflict. We understand the shouting match, the slammed door, the direct confrontation. In psychoanalytic terms, this is an ego-to-ego battle. It's a house fire, loud, hot, and terrifyingly obvious. Your senses scream danger, and your conscious mind knows it must react, to fight, to flee, to protect its visible boundaries. While painful, the threat is known. The smoke is in the air, the alarm is ringing, and you know which way is out. But the injuries that truly reshape us, the ones that burrow into the soul's deep architecture, are rarely so loud. This is the realm of covert manipulation. If overt conflict is a fire, this is a carbon monoxide leak. It is odorless, colorless, and moves with a chilling silence. It doesn't burn down your house. It quietly changes the quality of the very air you breathe until you can no longer trust your own perceptions. Its lethality lies in its subtlety. This type of psychological pressure works by displacing the oxygen of your own reality with the manipulator's narrative. It's a slow starvation of the psyche, leading to that disorienting vertigo we spoke of, where you feel dizzy and confused in the rooms of your own mind. It bypasses the ego's firewalls because it often comes disguised as care, reason, or even love. The primary function of this covert language is not to communicate, but to control. However, it's a unique form of control, one that seeks not just compliance, but the complete colonization of your reality. The goal is to subtly dismantle your world and rebuild it into one that is more convenient, less threatening, or more validating for the other person. As depth psychologist James Hillman might suggest, it's an attack on the anima mundi, the soul of your personal world. It's so profoundly disorienting because it feels like reality itself is betraying you, when in fact, it is only a single, distorted narrative posing as the truth. To truly understand how this invisible poison works, we need to illuminate its mechanics. We will explore this process through the lens of three core psychological principles: Three distinct methods of psychic erosion. The first is invalidation, the art of denying your inner reality until you learn to deny it yourself. The second is the weaponization of virtue, the twisting of concepts like honesty and truth into weapons of the shadow. And finally, we will look at boundary testing, the systematic dismantling of your psychic home, leaving you unprotected and undefined. By understanding the architecture of this attack, we can begin to rebuild our own. Let us begin with our first exploration, a phenomenon I call the distorted mirror. To understand it, I want you to meet Sarah. For Sarah, painting is not a mere hobby, it is a sacred practice. It is a form of what the great Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung called active imagination, a dialogue between her conscious mind and the deep, symbolic world of her unconscious. When she paints, she is in communion with her most authentic self, a place of vibrant color and uninhibited emotion. It is her soul's playground. One afternoon, her partner comes in, looks at her latest, most joyful creation, and says with a quiet, almost imperceptible sigh, "You get so emotional about this stuff. You're a little too sensitive about a hobby, don't you think?" In that single moment, a shadow falls. On the surface, it is a simple, almost banal observation. But psychologically, it is a profound act of emotional invalidation. This is a subtle but powerful form of psychic violence where one person unilaterally declares another's internal experience to be wrong. The unspoken message is not just, "I don't understand your passion," but rather, "Your passion, in its very essence, is an error." This phrase, "You're too sensitive," is a psychological funhouse mirror held up to the soul. It takes the pure, radiant energy of the inner child, that part of us that feels joy without apology, and reflects back a distorted, grotesque caricature, something excessive, embarrassing, and in need of correction. When this mirroring happens repeatedly, especially if it resonates with earlier wounds from childhood, the psyche begins a tragic process of adaptation. It internalizes the distortion. Sarah, in an unconscious effort to maintain her connection to her partner, begins to question her own core nature. A thought, like a toxic seed, is planted. Maybe my joy is too much. Maybe my feelings are a liability. To be acceptable, to be loved, I must be more level. The funhouse mirror is no longer in her partner's hands. It is now installed inside her own mind. She begins to police her own enthusiasm, to censor her own heart. This is how a psychological complex is formed. A sensitivity complex begins to constellate in her unconscious, where the authentic act of feeling becomes tangled with deep-seated shame. The label, "too sensitive," becomes a cage she builds, not just around her painting, but around her capacity to feel deeply about anything. The real tragedy of invalidation is not that someone dismisses your hobby. It's that they teach you to dismiss your own soul. The reflection, then, is that healing from this requires an act of profound courage. To shatter that internal mirror and reclaim sensitivity not as a weakness, but as a vital, intelligent guidance system, the very thing that makes us most alive. Now, let us turn to a second, deeply insidious pattern, the weaponization of virtue. To see it clearly, we'll meet Alex. 4 months, Alex has nurtured a dream, pouring his hopes and late-night hours into a business plan. This document is more than just data and projections. It is a map to a future self, an artifact of his courage. In a moment of profound vulnerability, he shares this piece of his soul with his partner, seeking not validation, but connection, a witness to his hope. After a brief scan, his partner looks up and says, with an air of finality, "Look, I'm just being honest. This is never going to work. You just don't have the experience." Here, we witness the masterstroke of the Trojan horse. A virtue, honesty, is presented as a noble gift at the gates of our psyche. Because our culture venerates truth, our superego, our internalized moral compass, compels us to open the gates and receive it. To reject honesty feels childish, defensive, or weak. And so, we accept the offering. But hidden inside this beautiful wooden horse is not truth, but an army of shame, doubt, and cruelty, which now has free rein within our emotional walls. This isn't honesty, it is aggression wearing a mask of integrity. It's a tactic that makes the recipient feel guilty not only for their perceived flaws, but also for the very pain the gift inflicts. From a Jungian perspective, this dynamic is a glaring projection of the speaker's shadow. The shadow, as Jung described it, is the container for all the parts of ourselves we have repressed or refused to acknowledge: our fears, our insecurities, our envy. When Alex's partner says, "You don't have the experience," they may very well be giving voice to their own deep-seated fear of failure or their envy of Alex's courage to even try. It is a psychic offloading. By projecting this darkness onto Alex under the righteous banner of truth-telling, they get to disown their own uncomfortable feelings and feel powerful and rational in the process, all while extinguishing the fragile flame of another's hope. The profound insight here is that this weaponized honesty is designed to disable your emotional response system. It reframes your natural reaction of hurt or disappointment as a character flaw, an inability to face reality. Healing from this requires a radical act of discernment. It is the work of learning to feel the energetic difference between honesty that serves to build a deeper, more authentic connection, and honesty that serves to bolster a fragile ego. True, compassionate honesty is a lantern held up between two people, illuminating the path forward together. The Trojan horse of honesty is merely a spotlight used to isolate, expose, and pin you down. Our final exploration takes us to the very edge of the self, to a dynamic I call the shifting fence. Let's witness a quiet moment with Maria and Tom. They are at dinner, and Maria, seeking a small island of presence in a sea of digital distraction, makes a gentle request. "Hey," she says softly, "could we have a no-phones rule for our date nights?" This is not a demand, it is a bid for connection. It is an invitation to create a sacred space, for just a little while, where two people can simply be present to one another. Tom's reaction is instant. He puts his phone down with a sharp sigh of annoyance. "Why?" he asks, his voice edged with accusation. "Are you always trying to be so controlling?" With that one question, the invitation is not just declined, it is pathologized. And here we must understand the profound psychological difference between a boundary and control. A boundary is a statement of your own reality, your own needs. It is your psychic skin. It is the gentle, necessary line you draw around yourself that communicates, "This is where I begin, and this is what I need to feel safe and whole." Control, on the other hand, is an attempt to manage someone else's reality, to dictate their behavior from the outside. Tom's accusation masterfully confuses the two. By framing her vulnerable request for connection as an aggressive act of control, he isn't just rejecting the boundary, he is punishing her for the audacity of having one. This dynamic triggers what psychologists call reactance, an immediate, defensive reaction to a perceived threat against one's freedom. But we must look deeper. What freedom is actually being threatened here? It is the freedom of the unexamined habit, the freedom of the unconscious compulsion to scroll. Maria's request is an invitation to move from unconscious behavior into conscious relating. Tom's reactance is the ego's defense of its own comfort zone. Rather than engage with his own internal discomfort, his attachment to the device or his resistance to presence, he projects the issue outward. He makes her the problem to avoid the more challenging work of self-regulation. Over time, the lesson learned from this shifting fence is devastating. You learn that your psychic skin is an offense. You learn that your needs are an imposition. To keep the peace, you stop planting fence posts. You learn to live without definition, in a state of psychological fusion or what Jungians call conflatio, where you no longer know where you end and the other person begins. The ultimate insight, then, is a reclamation. To build a boundary is not an act of war. It is the sacred, life-sustaining act of building a home for your own soul. It is only from within the quiet integrity of that home that you can truly and authentically reach out to another. So, where does this leave us, standing in the wreckage of these quiet interactions? What is the common thread that runs through the stories of Sarah, Alex, and Maria? It is the gut-wrenching, soul-splitting experience of cognitive dissonance. This isn't just mental stress, it is a psychic schism, a state of internal emergency where two fundamental, yet opposing realities are held at once. Belief 1. This person who is central to my life loves me and wants what's best for me. Belief 2. My interactions with this person consistently leave me feeling devalued, confused, and fundamentally wrong. The psyche cannot hold this paradox for long. It is a state of such profound chaos that it will do almost anything to find resolution. And here lies the most tragic and brilliant of our survival mechanisms, one often rooted in the deep logic of attachment theory. To resolve the dissonance, the psyche is presented with two choices. Either accept the terrifying reality that the person you depend on for love and safety is, in fact, the source of your pain, or conclude that the pain is your own fault. For many of us, especially if we have earlier developmental wounds, the first choice is simply too threatening to our sense of stability. So, the psyche makes a sacrificial choice. To preserve the critical attachment, it chooses to fracture its own perception of reality. It resolves the dissonance with a devastating conclusion: I must be the problem. I am too sensitive. I am not good enough. I am the one who is wrong. This is the fertile ground where the most advanced tools of reality crafting take root. A phrase like, "I'm not ready for a relationship," spoken while acting within one, is designed to keep you in this state of self-blame indefinitely, a psychological limbo where you are forever auditioning for a role that will never be cast. Even more profound is the accusation, "You've changed," when you start to heal or grow. From a Jungian perspective, this is a direct assault on the process of individuation, the soul's sacred journey toward wholeness. It is a statement that says, "My love for you was conditional on you remaining smaller than you are meant to be." And this brings us to the key, the ultimate realization of our journey today. That feeling of vertigo, of wrongness, of dissonance, your emotional compass, was never broken. It was working perfectly. That nauseating spin was the needle trying desperately to point true north while you were being told to walk south. The pain was not a symptom of your defectiveness. It was the healthy, intelligent response of a psyche being fed a lie. The map you were given, the one that depicted you as flawed and difficult, was a forgery. The work of healing, then, is not to fix your compass. It is to finally, bravely, and defiantly learn to trust it again. So we arrive, at last, not at a destination, but at a doorway. The journey out of the disorienting fog of psychological manipulation is not about learning to win an argument or proving the other person wrong. It is a much quieter, more profound pilgrimage inward. It is the journey of learning to trust your own instruments again after being told they were broken. It is the sacred work of honoring your feelings, not as defects to be managed or evidence of your pathology, but as invaluable, undeniable data. That feeling of being drained, that psychic static, that quiet sense of diminishing in someone's presence, this is not your weakness speaking. It is your wisdom. It is the clearest, most honest signal your psyche can send that the dynamic you are in is not life-giving. The purpose of this knowledge is not to build a fortress of cynicism around your heart. A life lived in perpetual distrust is its own kind of prison. The true goal is to graduate from a state of blind trust or reactive distrust into a state of quiet, embodied discernment. This is the subtle art of listening beyond the curated words people say and attuning to the actual, felt reality they co-create with you. Does your nervous system calm or constrict in their presence? Do you feel more yourself or less? Does your soul feel expansive, or does it feel like it's being asked to shrink? This is the wisdom the body holds, the truth that the body keeps, long after the mind has been talked out of it. This path asks you to become a compassionate witness to your own experience, to finally trust that your internal world has a valid and intelligent grammar all its own. It is an invitation to believe that your sensitivity is not a flaw, but a high-resolution perceptual tool. It is the understanding that true, healthy connection does not require the sacrifice of your reality. It is built upon the foundation of two whole, sovereign selves choosing to meet. You do not have to make yourself small for someone else to feel big. You do not have to dim your own light for their world to feel bright enough. And so, I will leave you with a question, an invitation for a quiet moment of reflection, either now or in the days to come. I want you to gently become an archaeologist of your own memory. Go back to a time, a conversation, or a relationship, and ask yourself, What is one thing my body knew was true long before my mind was ready to accept it? The question I leave you with is not a rhetorical one. It is a gentle key to a door within yourself. And if you feel called to, I warmly invite you to share a reflection in the space below. Think of our comments section not as a forum for debate, but as a digital talking circle, a space for collective witnessing. The act of writing your story, of giving it form and air, can be a profoundly healing act. And equally, the act of reading another's story and recognizing the echo of your own experience can be the very validation that finally quiets the voice of self-doubt. Your small, personal truth, when shared, becomes part of a universal tapestry, reminding us that we are not alone in these quiet struggles. If this journey of exploration has resonated with you, if it has illuminated some hidden corner of your own inner world, you can let me know by giving this video a like. It is a small, simple gesture, but it sends a powerful signal, not just to an algorithm, but to a wider culture, that these slow, deep conversations about the health of the soul are needed and valued. And if you wish to continue these explorations with us, to delve further into the unseen architecture of the human mind, then I invite you to subscribe and join our community. It is an open invitation to an ongoing journey. Ultimately, the work we have done here is about reclaiming a sense of inner authority. It is the beginning of a return to the quiet, unwavering truth of your own perception. Remember to offer yourself the same compassion and curiosity you would offer a dear friend. The path to clarity is paved with gentle self-attunement. Thank you for sharing your time and your presence here with me today. Be well in your truth, and may you always trust the wisdom of your own compass.